and welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast. This is episode 30. It's the big 3-0. We're finally old enough to be 30 episodes old.
Wow.
Happy
it.
podcast anniversary, Dicebreaker.
Yeah.
I'm Matt Jarvis, I'm the editor-in-chief of Dicebreaker, and I am joined this week by two of the team. I'm joined by Alex, Lolies, video producer for Dicebreaker. Hello, Lolies, how are you?
For Dicebreaker.
Dicebreaker.
Hello, 'tis I. I am the same age as the podcast, although
30 weeks.
as of 30 weeks old, yeah.
Wow.
As of next week, the podcast will be the eldest child, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right?
Sure,
The eldest
yeah.
child. Yes.
Yes. Oh, right. Wait, how old is Johnny?
I don't know. Let's not guess on the podcast. That's only going to lead us down a bad road.
I thought he was 30. Anyway, moving on.
Not trying to guess Johnny's age is Alex Meehan, staff writer for Dicebreaker. Hello, Meehan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm not 30 years old. Although sometimes I feel a lot older than that at the moment because 2020 is here.
Yeah. This year is truly that cup from Last Crusade where you take a small sip of 2020 and suddenly you're just bones in the corner.
Yeah, and a woman's like screaming while you're turning into little bits of bone. Yeah, and an old man is like, "Ooh, you did a bad.
You chose poorly."
You did a bad.
Yep, that's what he says.
We are, of course, here to talk about all the board game news and tabletop RPG news and general tabletopiness of the last week or so, which we will begin in, typical fashion by diving into what we've been playing. Let's get this out of the way. Alex Lolies, what have you played this week?
I've played Game of Thrones. You forgot I played Game of Thrones,
yes, sorry,
Matt. Yeah, we were just discussing how I hadn't played anything, and then I realized I had played something, and that's the Game of Thrones.
Did you win or did you die?
I died.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was the boy with the golden crown, the crown of the yellow crown. Yeah. The golden crown, right? The boy with the golden crown.
Is that one of the
Game of Thrones
characters? Yeah, is that?
It's a reference to Joffrey, isn't it? When what's his face? What's the guy?
What's the guy?
when Mr. Stark looks in the book.
When Mr. Stark? You mean Eddard?
No.
No.
Wait, who am I thinking of?
Isn't that Mr. Stark? I don't know. Are we going into Avengers territory now? I've got his name wrong, haven't I?
Anyway, I didn't win, is what I'm trying to say.
Long-winded.
I mean, I was so bad at the game that I lost the tutorial 4 times before we even started. The tutorial that tells you what to do, I lost it 4 times.
I don't think you should be able to lose tutorials. I think that's stupid. It should just be like...
I only won it as well because Wheels told me how to win. I was like, we were like, okay, let's just do the tutorial before we start, and everyone did the tutorial, and I started before Wheels. Wheels finished before me because I kept losing, and then I was like, guys, I can't get this. Wheels was like, this is what you do. I was like, okay, thank you.
Well, it's not exactly the most accessible game out there, so
it's actually not that bad. I thought all I'd kind of heard about the Game of Thrones board game in previous years is that it's kind of like long-winded and a bit dull, and I think I'd only really heard of it being referred to by friends of mine who'd be like, let's have a small casual Game of Thrones, anyone? Like that kind of styly. So yeah, we played it in less than an hour and a half. I think just over an hour. We played a whole game, and it was really good fun. I think I definitely like to play it a good bit more because I feel like it's the kind of game I could get good at, but I just didn't know how. Also, there was an incident between Johnny and me, which I won't spoil.
Yes, I watched it.
Which only helped Wheels, win in the end. Spoilers.
So yeah, that's what happens. Two warring houses are off, having conflict with one another. Another one worms their way in. So.
Yeah, and we all know that Wormy Wheels is a worm.
Wormy Wheels, yeah.
Wormy Wheels, as we call him around the office.
Michael Worms Whelan.
I also played some... Actually, I played some D&D over the weekend. Not just yesterday, as we know, but also over the weekend, where I played a human wizard called Merlin.
Oh.
Because I came up with him an hour before the game. It was good fun. We had a few people who hadn't played before, so it was quite the adventure.
Oh.
And Merlin the old man was quite fun in the end. I really liked him. I think I might whip him out in a future adventure because he was quite fun to play.
Sure, he'd love that.
I'm doing these, obviously, like, people who are listening to the podcast can't see, but I'm doing these little, like, shoulder shakes because, and nobody will be aware of this because nobody watched our game because it was a private game on Discord. But Merlin did a lot of dancing in it, which is why I'm doing these shoulder shimmies. So yeah,
sounds like
that's all I've been doing.
Merlin was a very fit old man.
I mean, he's just happy, jolly old man.
Just the rhythm's flowing through him.
Yeah.
His hips didn't lie.
Exactly.
I do feel like that sometimes because we obviously play a lot of RPGs for the job, and often because we are busy up until the moment where we suddenly go, oh, we have that video right now that we need to record. A lot of the characters, at least that like I've come up with, and I think that quite a few others have come up with, have been like very on the fly. I have one idea and I'm going to run with it as far as it will go. But I think that's often really good fun because you then, like, there's the problem of overplanning, right? It's where you think out a character's entire backstory, you've written their family tree, you know what the name of their hamster is. But there's something fun to be said for I have one concept and I'm coming in with it and I'm going to lean on it as hard as possible until it explodes and see which of the threads I follow.
I think part of it as well is you kind of end up forming the character as you play and you're letting other people and other characters influence you maybe to a certain extent. I definitely found that, like, because Merlin, I had no idea. I was like, human, wizard, Merlin. I was like, I'm going to make him a bit dumb. Like, he's going to be a bit of a stupid wizard. Like, he's not... I was like, not even dumb, but just really clumsy. Like, I feel like he is not a very good wizard. In my head, the only backstory I'd come up with was that he was born as a human and his parents named him Merlin. So he was like, oh, I want to be a wizard, like the great Merlin that,
of ye olde.
Yeah, exactly, ye olde Merlin. And so he decided, it wasn't that he is actually the wizard Merlin, but he is a Merlin who decided to become a wizard but wasn't very good at it. And that's pretty much what happened. And yeah.
Nice.
Good times.
Yeah, it's worth saying, because you alluded to it, that we have recorded another run of Dungeonbreaker. Dungeonbreaker is back. If you're listening to this the day it goes live, Dungeonbreaker is back tomorrow, on Saturday, the something of October. Let me just quickly check the calendar. It's the 24th of October it's back on. So yeah, that run of episodes, which we film 3 episodes at a time, I think I have not laughed that hard during a Dungeonbreaker filming session, and maybe not during any RPG, other than when we played Quest, and you were Harry Otter, Lolies, and Wills was a child spy with the head of a goose, and Meehan was the Dairy cow, and I think there are a few times where I've just cried genuinely cried with laughter during an RPG. That was one of them. Yesterday was one of them. I think Cyberpunk was another one.
I think I've definitely had some great sessions, but I don't think I ever laughed as hard during any of our let's play, any of our filming sessions as I did yesterday. I was like, my body was seizing up because I was laughing so much. There was just snot running out my nose. I was trying not to get rid of my makeup. It was no spoilers, but it was at a certain point where I was like, I just gotta.
It was something, all right.
It was hilarious, and I feel like, Matt and I were saying this yesterday. We were like, I feel like I say this every time, but this is my favorite set of episodes so far. I think it has felt, for some reason, this break has felt a lot longer than the previous breaks we've had, even though we always take breaks between seasons. This one to me has felt like it's just been forever. And so when we sat down yesterday, I was a bit like, oh god, I'm gonna have to remember how to play Myst. It's been a while. But as soon as we started, I was right there, and I feel like everyone was just right there, and everyone was just on form, God, the chaos.
Yeah. I think those characters have gotten to the point of, I'm sure this will only improve, but I feel like they've gotten to the point where they're like bicycles. I don't know, when I'm playing Tim the Goblin, I do have that moment of, okay, how do I do this again? And then as soon as we're getting into it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is what Tim does, and this is how he sounds, and this is his whole thing.
Yeah, as soon as the voice hits, I think is when it's like, oh right, that's the more boss. Every time it's nerves up until the point where I do the voice, and then it's like, oh right, I remember this. I'm just a jerk.
But you want to be loved.
Yeah, well, that was that was the. Speaking of, I think this is why, and I'm partly riffing on this because I've played nothing this week other than D&D. So I'm absolutely filling for time. But that was the thing, is coming into Dungeonbreaker, I'd not really played a lot of D&D because it wasn't my RPG of choice. I had one concept, which was, this is a tiefling who wants to be super evil and powerful but isn't. And it was that thing of the first few episodes were finding that level. And as well as part of the party, because we're all kind of coming in from different directions. But I think that's why every run feels better and better. And it probably happens with a lot of RPGs. But you find that kind of natural thing of oh, okay, here's my place in this party. Here's what I know I can riff off of.
Yeah.
It was very satisfying. So, yes, hopefully if you're listening to this, you'll go and watch Dungeonbreaker when it returns.
We will be having a premiere, I believe, right? So
we'll be
some
in the
of
chat.
us will be in the chat while it's going during the premiere. So come join us. It's a lot of lols. I love being in the chat during the premiere because it's so great just to see people's reactions to certain moments, or even just, when we're filming these 3 episodes, I forget bits and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I forgot about this, and it's just really fun to watch it back and just relive those moments.
Yeah, I do like being in the premieres as well. I like to see what the people think.
Yeah, I think particularly at the moment as well, where we're all remote, which kind of, you lose some of the energy of being in a room with other people and being able to make quick glances or gestures at them. But being able to chat with a load of people who kind of enjoy what we do is always very nice, because you almost get to get that spirit back again, where it's like, oh, now we're in a room with, several hundred people. Yeah, it's very fun. And when you forget the jokes and they hit again, or you miss them the first time around because you were busy thinking about something else, I've definitely laughed just as hard the second time around at silly things that people have said.
Yeah,
anyway.
Sure.
All right, that's enough filling from me.
Oh, delicious jam filling.
If Lolies, that's all you've played this week, let's... Yep. Let's move over to Meehan. Meehan, what have you been playing this week?
I have been playing, aside from D&D with the others, Wingspan. Yes, my flatmate and I played some Wingspan last night. The digital version, that is. Unfortunately, I don't own the physical version as much as I would like to. And we played split screen local, which you can do on the digital version. The digital version actually has a lot of options for how you can play. I'm really impressed. And the digital local version actually works really well because in the game, everyone can kind of see what you're doing anyway. It's not like, you're trying to keep certain things secret. So the fact that, the opponent can see what you're doing on your screen doesn't really make much of a difference. So the split screen works just fine. And it was my flatmate's first time playing, so I talked them through it, and they eventually did get the hang of it to the point where they beat me.
Oh wow! To be fair, I did kind of win my first ever game of Wingspan too. I think there's definitely some beginner's luck sometimes.
Is that another certified Lolies kind of win?
Well, I technically won. In terms of it was a draw, and then the whatever the tiebreaker was went against me. But I had technically kind of won.
Okay.
Well, there was a joint win that then went against me when it came to the tiebreaker.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you lost, but you're refusing to admit that loss. It's like, I was winning up until the point where I stopped counting the points.
No! I had the same amount of points as another person, but then there was a tiebreaker. It was like whoever had most food or something left, and I was like, well, technically
food is very important. In both Wingspan and General, so fair enough. But I technically did not win this. 2 points! 2 points between us. It was so
Try
fun.
0 points.
What?
I said try 0 points and then get back to me.
I will. I'll let you know as soon as it happens. It was really enjoyable actually. I've only obviously played it once before. That was on the stream, and then I played it again, and I obviously got a much better hang of it because, I realised how the round scoring works and everything like that. So I was able to actually take advantage of that. And this time there were some interesting round scorings. There were so in Wingspan you collect bird cards and you play them in different habitats, and you can do different things like getting more bird cards or food or laying eggs. And then each round there are kind of scoring requirements, and at the end of the game there are other things that can get you points as well. So I kind of had a better understanding how the scoring rounds worked, and it meant that you're smirking, and I'm very concerned about what's happening right now. I have my other laptop to the side of me, and at the corner of my eye, I can see the podcast document being edited, and I suspect it's something to do with that. But needless to say, Wingspan is a very good game, and I would like to own the physical copy because it looks really pretty as well.
It does.
And I'm really into it now, actually. I just love the way it works. I think it plays with, making decisions in a very interesting way, where you're like, oh, I have branching paths here. Which one should I go for? Okay, I'm going to try and go for this one. But there you go. Wingspan.
There you go, Wingspan. Yeah, I would like to play more Wingspan. Also, those eggs do look delicious, so...
like mini
careful.
eggs.
If you ever buy the actual game, be careful.
Mini eggs. Anyway.
They didn't happen this year, did they? Mini eggs.
They didn't happen this year. Well...
Yeah, they always happen at Easter, right?
Yeah, I think Easter...
Or maybe it's just that usually I'm in an office and somebody will buy them and then I'm made aware of them and I otherwise don't.
Yeah, I think didn't Easter land right as lockdown was coming in?
Yep.
So it was probably that nobody was able to get out and get eggs.
I had eggs.
All right.
Yeah.
I just had them after Easter in the discount sale.
I did that too.
Yeah.
We got some Easter eggs and then we were buying them for a week after because they were cheaper than just getting normal chocolate. And so we were just buying all these Easter eggs and eating Easter eggs. It was great. I just remembered that.
Yeah, hot tip there. Buy them after Easter.
It's like when you buy the supermarket own brand chocolate and it always tastes like Easter egg chocolate.
Yeah.
Like really, really cheap chocolate always tastes like Easter egg chocolate for whatever reason. There's just something about the way it's made.
It's a comforting taste, I think, because it reminds me of my youth.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really eat plain chocolate, really, so I wouldn't really know that, I guess.
I only eat my chocolate in egg form. Thank you very much.
I only have, like, chocolate with, like, nuts or salted caramel chocolate. Or
wow, very decadent.
Chocolate with marzipan.
Just slapping a bar of plain dairy out of her. How dare you?
How dare you?
Don't insult me.
All right, let's move on to news, shall we?
Yes,
let's. There are a few headlines this week, which you can find over on Dicebreaker.com. Let's kick off with this one, which I think was actually announced a little while back, but there's a few more details creeping out on it now. It's the next game from the designer of Splendor, which is a very fantastic card game.
Soul Raiders.
Well, Lolies has revealed the name.
It is called Soul Raiders. It seems to be a very different kind of thing to Splendor. So Splendor is very much a kind of like mechanical. You are collecting gems, and then you're trading those gems for cards, and the cards have points, and that's kind of how it goes. But Soul Raiders, as Lolies just sang, it's kind of like a story-driven adventure game. It has over 1,000 cards, which sounds like a nightmare if you ever drop the box. And it's from Marc-Andre, who is the creator of Splendor. And it's kind of like it sounds a bit like the Seventh Continent, which we've discussed here before, in that it appears to be, it's a co-op game. The players are a band of warrior mages, and they are trying to stop some kind of doom from happening, as is the way. And then you play in kind of 1 to 2 hour chapters that all feed into each other and have apparently kind of branching paths and decisions that the players can make. And you can fail a chapter, but you will always keep moving forward up to the last chapter of that kind of arc or story, whatever it may be. So you can kind of just explore and encounter things and fight things at your will. Apparently it's not played in turns. It's like a simultaneous, almost like real-time game, which sounds quite interesting. There's not loads of information on exactly how it all works yet. There is the information that you share hit points, so you're not kind of separate characters, you're just a party. And it will be on Kickstarter early next year. But it is also playable at Essen Spiel, or Spiel Digital, which is taking place this weekend. So if you are looking to check it out, it is available during that show.
Lolies finger guns.
I played this a few years back at Essen when it was just a prototype, and it was a very short demo with Mark. But it was really interesting. It really reminded me of Unlock, if I'm remembering right. Like I say, it was a few years ago, in that you get different cards and you kind of combine them together to form new items. So it's kind of got that point and click adventure feel to it. But I don't know how much it's changed since then, because I think that was 2018 or 2017 even. Yeah, let's move on to the next news story, which is an Ultimate Edition of King Arthur Pendragon, which I think is an RPG that not loads of people know. It's kind of like a cult classic, but a classic very much in the sense of the word, because it's from the 1980s. And it was created by the designer of RuneQuest, which I think people generally know a bit more, Greg Stafford, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago now. But it's like it's a really big kind of Arthurian RPG where you play knights and whatnot, questing in the way that the Round Table Knights did. But the kind of interesting thing about it is you play as these knights. They go out on quests. They, solve various political problems, or just beat some people up with swords. and then you come back home, you tend to your homestead, you get married, potentially you have children,
Wow!
And then like decades and generations pass, and your character will change to your heir. So you don't play as one character non-stop. You will play as that character until they basically retire, and then you become their heir and continue the kind of questing lineage of your family, which is really interesting. I own a copy of the last edition, which I think is like a number of years old at this point. But the news is that there is a 6th edition on the way, and they've actually put some quick start rules out already for it, as kind of a little preview, which I've not played yet, along with an adventure that was designed by Greg Stafford back in 1991 and I think was never publicly released. So you can go and check it out for free if you want. It's up on Chaosium's site, which is the publisher of it.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's...
Can your homestead have various farm animals living on it or not?
I mean, it's a role-playing game, so presumably, and then I guess you can just engage in combat with them.
No, I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to just look after them. And then when the others are like, oh, do you want to come out to a quest? I'm like, no.
No, sorry, I'm tending to my sheep.
Yeah, please don't disturb the sheep.
I think it's quite down to earth as well. I don't think you could, for instance, raise some sheep as your heir and then play a questing sheep gripping a broadsword in its mouth.
I'm no longer interested.
That was Lolies' endgame.
I'm assuming, like, can you... Are you then also... Because if you're playing through generations, obviously the world around you changes over time, right? Like, politically and, like, what's that word? Technologically.
Yeah.
Is that all stuff that happens then throughout the game? Curious.
I believe so. I haven't played loads of it. I certainly haven't played like a long campaign. But I know that there's a very well-known campaign for it called I think it's just called the Great Pendragon campaign, which is kind of this really, really long campaign set during a very specific period of the Middle Ages. So I think there you see that kind of passage of time.
Okay.
I guess it would depend on the group. You know, if they are focused on questing, you might not necessarily see some of the at-home stuff. But I think generally the focus is like that balance of doing the day job, you know, slaying monsters, dealing with kind of gribblies or whatever it may be, and then coming home and raising sheep for
and
7 years.
Having a delicious pie, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure that pie is in there somewhere.
It should be.
The other thing is, the other thing that makes it notable is it has like passions and virtues, which I think they've popped up in games since. But basically, it's like your moral code as a knight, and if you don't follow them, you're thrown into turmoil. So, like, if you're very virtuous and you fail to engage in virtuous behavior, or you kind of let someone else get away with, you know, behavior that's not completely upstanding, that might then shake you a bit. And affect your dice rolls or affect your kind of psyche from then on.
So say if someone really liked pie in the game, and they saw like a pie on someone's windowsill, if they stole that pie, the delicious pie smoke. If they stole that pie, would they then be like, "Oh no, I've done a bad thing"?
Yeah, I don't think it would be very chivalrous to steal a pie.
No. So then you would be changed forever by that.
Yeah.
That experience would change as a person.
Well, there you go.
Yes, you could play Pendragon, I'm sure, as a Looney Tunes sketch in which you float along, lifted off the ground by the smell of delicious pie.
Yeah, delicious pie. Yeah.
But yeah, so a quick note on this. So Stafford, obviously, like I say, passed away in 2018. But apparently he started development on this 10 years ago, so it's been a long time coming. And kind of considered it the ultimate edition of this game. So that kind of implies that maybe this will be the last major release for it. It feels odd to describe it as the ultimate edition and then follow it up with something else. But we will find out more, presumably quite soon. So yeah, there's Pendragon. You can go and, like I say, you can go and download it for free if you want to try out the rules now. Let's move on to wiggly finger.
Oh.
Are you just pointing at the next news item?
Yeah.
I found it. Stargrave is a sci-fi spin-off from Frostgrave, which is a miniatures game that I know Wheels is very fond of. Because
Wormy Wills?
Wormy Wheels.
Yep.
In this case, Wizardy Wheels, because Frostgrave is a game about wizards who basically go and beat each other up and fight over treasure in a ruined
Always
city.
the beating each other up.
Yeah, well, wizard's gonna wizard. Let me remove this cat from my table.
Merlin was all about beating people up, so yeah. Can confirm.
So yeah, Frostgrave is kind of like it's a skirmish game. So you use very small amounts of figures, and it is spinning off into Stargrave, in which you form a kind of crew of a starship and fly around the galaxy, performing odd jobs, and generally, making money, making fame, being honourable or dishonourable, depending.
Space pies.
Space, yes, but more specifically, space pirates.
Because
you can be attacked by
pirates.
Yes.
Oh no!
Well, I had to get the segue in there somewhere. So yeah, it has this kind of campaign mode apparently, where your crew can progress and you can eventually hire different crew members to your ship. But largely you'll just be scrapping with other crews over stuff, as is the way.
When I saw this headline, I got very excited, and then immediately I got very disappointed. Because my first thought was that Frosthaven rather than Frostgrave. And I was like, oh my god, they're doing a space version of Gloomhaven / Frosthaven. Amazing. And then I was like, no, that's not it.
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are excited about it.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint with the news that I wrote based on the facts.
Yeah.
Next time I'll invent the game.
No, I like space things, so there's that. I am excited about it. I'm just saying that creator Isaac Childress, if you're listening, please make a space version is all I'm asking. Thank you. Goodbye.
At some point I'm sure that must be inevitable.
I hope so. But it's not really set in that kind of world, I don't think.
No, but you could take that system, right, and apply it to...
Yeah.
You've got ranged combat, you sort of magic for lasers.
Oh, I hope
just
does.
whack some aliens in it, whatever.
I'm almost certain we'll see a sci-fi Gloomhaven at some point.
Yeah. You called it, Lolies.
Okay, you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, back to the game that does exist. So Stargrave, one of the things with Frostgrave is that it's not like Warhammer in that you buy loads of models. You just pick up the rulebook, which I think is about 25 quid, something like that, 20 quid. And you can use most models that you already own. So it's more a rulebook than it is a set of models, but there are some official models on the way as well.
You wrote your £21, Matt.
I did. Yes, £21 for the digital version and 25 quid for the physical version. Which appear to be out next April. So nice. I guess we'll hear more by then. Osprey, which is the publisher of Frostgrave and Stargrave, has a habit recently of announcing things way in advance, which particularly for the board game industry is almost unheard of.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird that that's only 6 months away?
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably feels like no time at all.
Isn't it weird that 2021 is 2 months away? 2.5 months away?
But the fact that April was only 6 months ago is more frightening because it feels like forever.
Anyway. Now, what's the next news story?
Meehan is desperately trying to keep this going.
Just powering on through.
Can't believe I'm the one doing this.
I've got good news for you, Meehan, because you wrote this story. So I'm going to just throw over to you, and it's now your job to keep this on track.
Time for some quality, am I right?
Wow.
I don't mean that. Matt Jarvis is an excellent writer. And I would never, ever say anything like that.
Digging. Just digging here.
Yeah, I wrote this one. Sorry.
What is happening?
You can cut that bit out. I knocked my laptop over.
No, keep it
That
in.
was an accident.
To scare the living hell out of everyone.
It'll be
that's
like
listening.
Citizen Kane when he puts the cockatoo in. Wake him up.
Oh, anyway, what's this table thing?
It's a digital board game table called the Infinity Game Table. Yeah, not a great name. Bit generic, isn't it, really? Felt like you could have come up with some better name than that.
It's like they came up with Infinity and were like, yeah, that's too generic. What can we add? I know, the word's game table. So,
It doesn't look very comfortable.
It doesn't look very comfortable.
No, they're all like leaning over. Like their backs are going to be sore if they're going to be playing that for a while.
I mean, that's
yeah.
that's my entire life.
Especially they're playing
right?
Monopoly. So if you're sitting there like that for 4 hours, my lord.
Also, it does just look like a massive iPad.
It does.
Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just because it's got that kind of black gloss bezel around it, so it just looks like someone put a massive table on 4 legs, massive tablet even on 4 legs.
Yeah. So essentially, it's like a table that has a screen in it, and it has like touch screen. So presumably you'll be able to pick things, select things and move them using your fingers. There's a 32-inch version and a 24-inch version. They have detachable legs.
So you can just use it like a massive tablet. Can you imagine that sitting next to you on the plane?
Pass it around. Oh my god, Wheels and I would 100% do that on the plane.
32-inch just...
What, a 32-inch?
Can you imagine if they were like, can you put away your electronics, please? We're like, no, we can't. It doesn't fit anywhere.
Whoa. I'd be impressed if you could get that on the plane, to be honest. I think they might take
it's like a
notice of it.
TV.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it weighs, but there's also a portable version that comes with a battery power unit. So presumably you could take it on the plane with you, Lolies.
Right, okay, so I think this sounds awful. The only way anyone can convince me otherwise is feel free to send me a copy. And I'll try it out.
Lolies, I've got more good news for you. You'll be able to play such games as Candyland, Operation Monopoly, all your favourites.
Candy Crush?
Scrabble. What?
Candy Crush?
I don't think so. I think Pandemic's on there.
I did see Pandemic written here somewhere, yeah.
That's something. Yeah, it's on Kickstarter right now. And it's been made in official collaboration with Hasbro, who are that massive board game giant that own like Wizard of the Coast and everything. So it's authentic. And they say that they're going to be introducing more content in the future, including indie games and previews for upcoming games, which is interesting. They did say on the Kickstarter that some of the games you'll have to buy in addition. When you buy the table, you get like a set of like 50 plus games, puzzle, and various other activities. But in the future, you'll be able to buy more games to put on in your table.
Can you imagine if somebody spilt a drink when you were playing a game? Also, where do you put your drink?
You would hope it would be waterproof.
Where do you put your
drinks? I think it is waterproof.
Yeah. I guess around the edge, but it just looks like very glossy.
Yeah, I don't think that it's ideal for that.
I have a lot of problems with this.
If you are not like Lolies and you like the sound of this, the Kickstarter is live until November 30th. You can get a 32-inch version for $699, also known as £543.
It's just too much. It's just I don't have a huge problem with like digital board games. I think they're generally very useful in some situations, but I've never seen one of these tables that is essentially just a big old screen, because if you have the room for a table, at some point, just like the benefit of digital board games is that they don't take up space and they, you can play them on the go.
Yeah.
But this just feels like very strange.
It does have a battery pack, Matt. So it is on the go.
It's portable, Matt.
But also, you could just use a phone or an actual tablet rather than this one specific very large item that only plays Monopoly. Or
how big is the battery pack? For this
I don't know.
You got to wear it like a Ghostbusters Proton pack.
You can play online with it as well. So
I hate
someone else has a table.
I hate this. I hate it a lot. Like I'm usually very open-minded, but I hate this with a passion.
It's
damning indictment from Lolies there.
It's manufactured by Arcade 1UP, which I think they are generally quite well considered in terms of making arcade machines, like home arcade machines. So presumably the build quality will be okay, but I think it's more just like who is this for? Who is spending $700?
That's a lot of money
to play Monopoly.
Yeah, right. It's like it's the games that most people already own in some form, except now you can pay $700 to crowd around a small screen and look at them.
Feels like something you'd find in a pub, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe that's where this goes. Do you remember when you used to go to whatever brand of family restaurant
Hungry
and they
Horse.
had Brewster's Fair?
Yes.
Yeah, and they used to have the Muppets Party Cruise on PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 in like a sealed like TV unit thing. Maybe this is meant to go that way.
But look, even like when you're looking at I'm just looking at the article, right, on the website.
Excellently written.
Yes, excellently written. Thank you very much. And there's even like I think it's the first picture in the article. Yes, it's like you can see that there's like reflections of like people's like people on the table. It's like, so are you gonna be annoyed during the game because you're like, well, I can't see that side of the board because there's like a big reflection on it. Like, it's not even like reflection proof.
I can neither confirm nor deny this. I've not seen one or used one, so I'm just going off the Kickstarter description.
Also, the legs on it look like just metal, kind of flat metal poles. It doesn't.
It looks like an ugly table.
Yeah,
like they could have at least put like, I don't know, something underneath it where you can store something. I don't know, but like it's a really
board games.
It is what you said, Matt. It's just a massive tablet with legs. That's what it looks like. It's not even in it. Like it's called Infinity, right? It doesn't even have an Infinity screen. Like the fact is, it doesn't like. There's a massive frame around the edge. Like, would you not have just made it so it's like right to the edge? Like that would be quite cool looking. This looks like a tablet like from like, I don't know, 7 years ago.
Wow.
Okay, well, that's the...
But get burnt!
Alex Lonely's opinions do not reflect the opinion of Dicebreaker as a brand. No, it doesn't look great. I think we're all agreed on that. But, there are people for whom it might be, beneficial in various ways.
Yeah.
So, hey, if it's for you, it's for you. Let's move on to this one. Johnny's not here, who would probably be the best person to discuss Warhammer Warcry. Or to give its full name, the new Warhammer Warcry core set is called Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry Catacombs.
Oh!
Which has an upsetting combination of colons and hyphens. Because it's just brand within sub-brand within spin-off brand. So let's just call it Warcry Catacombs, shall we? So for those who aren't familiar with Warcry, it's essentially an all-in-one boxed game, which isn't Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It runs on a different set of rules. It is a skirmish game, so you use kind of small war bands of about 5 or 6 models or so. And the box comes with 3D terrain, it comes with a board that you lay all of that out on, and then you fight with each other. And that's kind of it. It's Warhammer, but very condensed, very kind of slick and streamlined compared to the big sprawling armies of Age of Sigmar proper. So the original Warcry came out last summer or last autumn, and did pretty well. I think Johnny is a big fan. I think it recently picked up an Origins award for best miniatures game, which I think we discussed last week on the podcast. Generally, people seem to really like it. So now they're putting out this new kind of core set, so you can jump straight in here as a starter set. And it is set in kind of dungeons and underground caves. It comes with a load of lava, there's traps, there are 2 new warbands, whose names
traps?
I will find. The name of the warband is...
Can't believe it!
The... the Canaanites, Shadow Stalkers, and the Scions of the Flame. Scions, I'm sure. Someone in the comments will let me know that I pronounced both of those wrong. But it's basically stealthy shadow people and fire-wielding pyromaniacs.
Oh!
So, yeah. It's a new set. It is out soon. I think pre-orders are live, so I imagine it'll be out before the end of the year. And they're also putting out some kind of standalone warbands for Warcry as a whole. Things like Skaven, which you can just
Johnny
pick up.
likes those. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
talked about them before.
So, yeah, this is... Games Workshop has kind of been on a roll with games that feature models that work in like Warhammer 40k or Warhammer Age of Sigmar, but are completely different kind of self-contained games. And from what I understand, Warcry is one of the better ones. So you can use these models in Age of Sigmar if you want to play Age of Sigmar proper. But if you pick up this box, it kind of has what you need in it. But there we go. That's Warcry.
I'm thrilled.
Woo! Yeah!
More like woo cry.
Hey!
All right, let's mosey on over to this next one. Alex Meehan, tell us about the new game from Uwe Rosenberg.
Oh, Uwe Rosenberg.
Oh, I'm
what
so
a
sorry,
lad.
Lolies.
What a lad.
It's just Uwe.
Uwe.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies to Uwe Rosenberg.
I'm sure he won't mind. We've spoken kindly about him in the past, so we'll speak about him now because he's designed a new game called Lolies.
Hallertau.
Hallertau.
Yep.
Which is about 19th century beer brewing.
This actually, do you know what? I was just looking at this, and first picture I saw on the article, once again excellently written. I was like, yeah, and then I saw, and I was excited already, right? German beer, whatever. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Whatever.
Then I saw Uwe Rosenberg, one of my favorite board game designers of all time. Sold.
Yeah, Lolies, this sounds like the board game for you. It's actually getting released this week, on the 22nd, which is exciting. And it's a pretty... It looks like a very Uwe Rosenberg sort of game. You grow your crops, you tend to your sheep, you look after your village, and you can expand it, and you can sort of trade your resources for other resources, or spend them to get points and things like that. And it's not the kind of setting that thrills me. But I'm glad that you are excited, Lolies. But I imagine if you like Agricola, then you'll probably be interested in this because it sounds sort of similar to Agricola.
It's not worker placement, I think, is it? Or
I can't tell you that because I
top
don't know
secret.
enough. It's top secret information. I don't know enough details about how you play the game to determine whether it is worker placement. I just know that some of the vague actions you can do are plant stuff in your fields, or spend your resources, or things like that.
yeah.
So I imagine if more information comes out about it, you'll find out if it is worker placement.
Or by the time you're listening to this, it'll be out.
Yeah.
So you might even just be able to go and pick it up.
You'll be able to see. Lookout Games are the publisher.
Look out, games.
Lookout Games, yeah. They publish Lookout Games has published a lot of Rosenberg's previous games, such as Patchwork.
Excellent
which is
game.
a favourite. Yeah, an excellent game.
Mhm.
And Cottage Garden.
Also excellent game. I have it.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Lolies.
Thank
Well,
you.
maybe you'll get Hallertau.
Maybe I will.
Yeah, I am intrigued. I like Rosenberg's games a lot.
Yeah, I like Patchwork.
Yeah, A Feast for Odin is like a game that I absolutely love, but requires so much time to play it that I'm just intimidated every time I think about playing it. It's a game that's great to play in my mind and then never actually play because I just don't have time. It's like, that would be really fun if I had 3 hours to spare right now.
We played Agricola, all creatures big and small, didn't we, Matt Jarvis?
We did, yes, which I always confuse with All Creatures Great and Small, because I don't know why they didn't call it that.
Copyright with God, I don't know.
Yeah, he wins every legal battle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. This also seems to, at least the pictures they put out, which is not a lot of pictures because...
Classic,
You have a classic board game publisher. Why show off the game that you're about to release when you can just have people guess at it? But there appears to be no kind of tile laying aspect, which is the first game in a while that I can think of from Rosenberg that hasn't had some kind of tile laying in it. Because
maybe he's sick of it.
Maybe. I mean, like A Feast for Odin. There's the Cottage Garden trilogy. There's endless patchworks.
There was a roll and write Patchwork, technically.
Oh yeah,
it
you're right.
So...
Called Patchwork Doodle.
Yes, I also have that.
Yeah, but it's nice to see him try something else. If not different in theme, at least different. It seems in gameplay.
Yeah, you can live your fantasy of being a 19th century German beer brewer.
I mean, isn't that everyone's fantasy?
At university, I did spend quite a long time brewing beer, home brewing beer.
How did that turn out, Matt Jarvis?
Largely good, until I think in the final year of university. I started it too late because the process takes a couple of weeks. And a friend and I were going to a concert, and we were students with no money. It was like, well, we should have a drink before we go. But
calm the nerves.
There wasn't any drink that we had. We couldn't afford any. So it's like, well, let's just drink whatever stage this homebrew beer is to. And it turned out to be kind of like mildly alcoholic, like yeast sludge. Because it hadn't properly fermented.
God,
so it was quite unpleasant, and I think that was the last time I homebrewed beer.
Yep.
And that was a number of years ago.
I feel a bit
I'd like to give it another go, but
maybe you should give it another go.
Was it
maybe
was it like beer flavored porridge?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, when people say that beer is like liquid bread, this was almost quite literally liquid bread because it was like a sludge of yeast and sugar. It wasn't great.
Yeah, don't try this at home, viewers and listeners.
Kids.
Well, you can homebrew beer perfectly fine, but make sure that you follow the instructions and
don't drink the
don't
sludge.
drink it 2 weeks early.
Don't drink the beer bread sludge.
Okay, on to this last news story. This is another one from you, Meehan. From today, in fact.
Oh my god, this is fresh! Fresh off the Barbie.
With the PH.
Zeno Language? Zeno Language?
Zeno Language is a game? A story game. That's what it's been described as. By Thorny Games, which have previously released a tabletop role-playing game called Dialect, about creating a language as a group and then deciding how it dies out in the end. Quite mournful. Whereas Zeno Language is also about language, funnily enough. But it's about communicating with a new alien race, with your crew of scientists, and kind of figuring out what's going on with these new aliens that have arrived, and a shared dark past, potentially. there aren't huge amount of details on the game, hence why I'm riffing on it. But I kind of mastered the art, so hopefully that wasn't too obvious until I point it out. Yeah, the Kickstarter campaign is launching soon.
Yeah, they've been vague about it, right? There's a preview, but they haven't said, hey, we're going live at this time.
Yeah, you can kind of check out the notification page at the moment and be like, yes, I want to know when it launches. And obviously that means that we don't know how much the pledge amounts are going to be. So, who knows? 'Tis a mystery, just like the aliens in this game, perhaps.
Yeah, Dialect was really neat as a concept. Like I think we've spoken about kind of like language in RPGs and whatnot, and kind of using that as a concept, like communication in general, and playing with it is always quite interesting in various games. So yeah, I'm really intrigued by this to see how this works and how much of the figuring out communication, figuring out the language is kind of real, if that makes sense. How much of it is like an actual puzzle and mystery and kind of cryptic thing, rather than just being gamified into shifting things around.
Yeah, I don't think obviously we've played games where we've like not been able to say certain words before. We've had to like communicate around that, like taboo or monikers or stuff like that. But obviously this, I imagine, will be something like, this will be of an entirely different language, potentially one that they've just made up. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know the details of how exactly it works yet, so we'll have to find out. But hey, languages are interesting.
Yeah,
I do like languages.
Yeah, you speak several languages, Lolies.
I speak a couple, yeah.
Yeah, and
2.5. 2
yeah.
quarters.
I speak 1 1/5.
I'm not sure
say.
I even speak a full one.
Yeah, no, I was intrigued by this as someone who's currently learning another language. Language is something that is interesting me at the moment, so yeah, I'd like to give it a try.
Yeah, I will say, just because it's on my mind, because we're chatting about language, but there's a very good podcast called The Allusionist, which is excellent, and kind of just goes through interesting parts of language and how words come about and how language is formed. It's very, very good.
No, I'd like to play that dialect game because I think it's very fascinating. Yeah.
Cool. All right, that's it for news. Let's shift on to emails. If you've got an email for the Dicebreaker podcast, you can reach us at podcast@dicebreaker.com. We can find us on Twitter at Join Dicebreaker, on Facebook, Instagram, all the usual places.
Yeah,
let us know what you're thinking and what you want to know.
Just do it, for goodness sake.
That's
enough.
our slogan. Our definitely not trademarked by a major sports brand slogan. Dicebreaker, just do it.
Well,
for goodness
no,
sake.
you are. Thank you, Lolies. You are misinterpreting what I said. Mm-hmm. I said just do it.
You're taking words out of her mouth.
Okay. I'm not sure that escapes the trademark by just adding "for goodness sake" to the end of it.
Hey,
I'm loving it. For goodness sake,
you can see me in court. Okay.
Words cannot be trademarked. Words belong to the people.
I'm not sure that's going to stand up in court.
Lolies and
two
I
legal
are
battles,
gonna...
one with God,
will
one
take
with...
this all the way to the top.
Yeah, Lolies and I are going to defend this to the death.
Yeah.
In court. We'll be the bailiffs.
100%.
Okay, let's read. Lolies, would you like to read this one from Emily, please?
I'd love to. Emily says, "Hey folks, I was recently looking into Quacks of Quedlinburg," excellent game, "because I'd heard so much about it from you all. And you would not believe my disappointment when I found out it wasn't about ducks.
Sad times.
My question is, have any of you had similar instance of misunderstanding a game's title, and do you think your version of the game would have made it better or worse? I personally think Quacks would have been better simply by having everyone also be ducks. Thanks, Emily." Emily, No. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Shut down.
I joke.
I think the quacks element is a different use of the word.
Yes, and I mean I think she's saying that they could also be ducks, but then I think
quacks.
Yeah, I think the problem with that then would be that people would think it's a game about ducks, not about like scientists or whatever, about quacks. You know, it's like I used to work for Big Potato Games, disclaimer, and whenever we worked at events and we had Big Potato written on our like clothing, whatever, they'd be like, "Oh, do you sell like fries or something?" It's like, no, we do board games. You know, like that stuff like that can be like problematic. Like, and then there was talk about like, oh, why don't you like bring out your own crisp brand called Big Potato? And it's like, no, because that just confuses it even more. I don't know the point I was trying to make, but there's a point in there somewhere.
Is it worth investing in an entire crisp brand just because of that?
But yeah, I don't know. There probably is.
For me, it's probably like Subterra was a game that I looked at the name in the box and I was like, oh, this is really exciting because I really like horror games. And it looked like the kind of game where you explore the darkness, and it's like oh my goodness, The Descent, which is a really good film, and I was so excited to play it. And then we played it and I was like, this is really disappointing, because not only is it a game that kind of doesn't really work that well, it's alright. It turns out it's a game where you are exploring caves and there are sort of monsters in it, but they don't really play a huge aspect in the game. Not as much as you want. And I think it doesn't really provide the kind of atmosphere I was hoping for. Like, it was a lot more kind of light and yeah, not what I was after when I was playing it. So I guess that's more of a misunderstanding about what to expect from a game called Subterra. I believe you've played it, Mr. Jarvis.
I reviewed it when it came out and I did not particularly love it. I think it kind of like it was fine, but I just didn't have a great time with it. I think it's not quite on the theme of the question because I'm struggling to actually think of one where I've misunderstood, or like where a word has like a double meaning and would be more fun the other way. But I find that like a lot of board games do quite a poor job of sounding fun. I've mentioned Container on this podcast before, so I won't go over that again. That's a lot more fun than it sounds. But there are games like there's a game called Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea, which A is way too long as a title, and B sounds very dry.
Oh, God.
Like it sounds like a real plodding war game where you are simulating, things very slowly over multiple hours. And there's like a tiny grain of that in there. But Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea is actually like a really ridiculous kind of full-on... It's not a party game, but it has elements of that. So you have a big old board. You play as civilizations from that era of history, or way back when. So you might play as like the Greeks or the Romans or, the Scythians. But you place counters to build up your cities and settlements. And then you play cards. And all the cards are basically just incredibly mean things against other people. And so it's like, here's a volcano, take all of your counters off of the map in these 4 areas. Or here's an earthquake, halve them. Or here's a famine. Or here's pirates that are now attacking you. Here's barbarians. And so it's this really kind of... It's actually quite simple, even though it presents itself as this very dry, long game. And you can play for like a long time. But you can also just play it for like an hour or 2 and then cut it off, because it's played in eras, so you can just play to 2 eras and see who's there. But the gameplay itself is like this really swingy kind of take that thing where you're just playing cards and doing what the cards say for most of the game. And so it's really fun for that reason, but it took a lot of convincing my wife and my friends to play it. And then as soon as they play it, they're like, oh, this is actually really fun. But because it comes across as like a very dry historical game, I think it's quite a hard sell for people. And there's quite a few games like that where like the theme just doesn't seem fun. And then you play it, it's like, oh, this is great.
I think a lot of board games make the mistake of having titles that are too literal. Like, I don't like board games that are just called, like, Florence, or, like, they're just named after, or, like, Amsterdam, or, like, stuff like that. They're just named after a place or a city. I'm like, well, that doesn't tell me what, that doesn't really evoke anything. You're just, sure, it's set in this location, but that's it. Whereas, I don't know, I prefer the names that kind of evoke like a feeling, or, like, a broader concept than just a place. So like Clank, for example, I think is a really good name because it's something that inspires like curiosity.
Sound,
like, oh, what? Yeah, it's like a sound. So instantly you're intrigued. And like I told my mom about, I was playing Clank, and obviously she doesn't really know much about board games, but instantly she was like, oh, what's that? Like, I think, yeah, names that kind of inspire like an interest or a feeling or a curiosity, I think, are the best ones. Lolies.
To answer Emily's question, yes, definitely. But I'm going through like the library of every game I've ever encountered in my whole life, and I'm really struggling because I feel like if it had happened, I've probably forgotten it by now. Like, I just don't know. I'd have to go and stand in front of Games Library, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, that one.
Like Chocolate Factory is a game. The name is, I'm instantly interested because chocolate. But the game itself is incredibly like heavy, from what I know. It's quite intense. And it's more about you are running this factory rather than delicious chocolate treats.
I remember that being at Tabletop Gaming Live last year and being like really intrigued by it and wanting to play it because I was like, oh, Chocolate Factory sounds great.
Yeah. It's like, no, you've got to repair this conveyor belt. Come on.
Yeah, I think that's more the problem, is like games that just don't manage to get across the experience of playing in the title, like you were saying. It's just like there are so many games where you read the title and you're like, oh, that sounds like a fun party game, or that sounds like a fun like light dungeon crawler, and then it turns out to be some kind of like super weighty like a Euro game that you have to sit down and read the rules for 4 hours to understand.
Yeah, I think the problem is that quite a lot of games end up getting their theme and their name just after they've been mostly completed. Like, they'll just get a theme or a name slapped on them, which for some it works fine. Like Barren Park was the case, and Barren Park is great. That was just like a lucky break, whereas like others you can kind of tell like the setting and the theme, the name is kind of like, oh yeah, let's just put this on here, whatever. And yeah, that's fine, but I don't know, I've always been more drawn to games that thematically feel a lot more whole rather than just, here are the mechanics, this is what you came for, right? I guess we'll just slap whatever on it. Yeah. There you go.
What was that game by the creators of Exploding Kittens where we were like, oh, they should have named it something else?
Oh, a game of cat and mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't that bad actually. Anyway, let's move on.
All right. Meehan, would you like to read this one from Niall?
Niall.
Oh.
No, thank you.
I would love to. Niall says, hi team. My question is about big games. The kind of games of in-depth narrative that need long sittings to complete. A single game or a campaign structure. What is the best way to get a board game novice into these kind of experiences? My fiance and I can get on with playing smaller games like Catan, Ticket to Ride, but I want to move on to bigger titles like Eldritch Horror, Mansions of Madness, Pandemic Legacy. All of these sit on the shelf but gather dust because she cringes at the idea of committing to overly long or multiple play sessions. Is there any games out there that serve as a middle ground, maybe quick and simple, but the campaign side to it also, just to introduce her to the style? Thanks and stay safe, Niall.
Well, Niall mentions in the email that they play Pandemic and he would like to play games like Pandemic Legacy. So that seems like a natural progression.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's also split into lots of smaller games.
Yeah, like Pandemic Legacy is just like you're playing loads of games of Pandemic, and you can kind of stop and start whenever you really want. Like my flatmate and I haven't played Pandemic Legacy in a while. But yeah, let's see.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Go on, Matt Jarvis.
I was going to say, yeah, Pandemic Legacy is, I think, maybe one of the better examples because it is basically just that core game and they slowly add in one thing at a time. So it doesn't feel like, by the end of 12 games or 15 games, whatever it is, you're playing like kind of a substantially different game. But because it's layered in nice and easy, I think generally it's a lot more approachable than it might seem at the outset, because when you look at it and you go, oh, like this is a big, we've got to embark on this big old campaign. Actually, the first 2 or 3 games are just going to be the Pandemic, and that will ease you in and you'll kind of get a feel for it. I think there are a few games like that, although I don't want to recommend people just go out and buy more games for the sake of like easing someone into the same game, but there are like lighter spin-offs of games, like something like Agricola or Creatures Big and Small is like a good example, because it's kind of like Agricola. There's the core of it there, but it's much quicker. There's like Patchwork Express, although Patchwork Normal is not particularly.
It's like Jaws of the Lion for Gloomhaven.
Yeah, Jaws of the
exactly.
Lion,
which would actually be quite a good one as well, because I think if you like, I mean, I've not played Jaws of the Lion, but from what I've heard, it's quite similar. It's just as a simplified version, whatever. I don't think Gloomhaven is that meaty necessarily, especially if like you are willing to, because it sounds like Niall would be willing to, kind of do the heavy lifting and kind of be the rules person, right? So it would just be a matter of his fiance then sitting down to play the games. I think Gloomhaven is actually very friendly, because I am that person. Like I play it with my friend and he's the one who knows all the rules, so like I very much just like follow his lead. I think Jaws of the Lion is quite a good option then, because I think once you're playing that, like those games, like Isaac Childress has done a really good job with those games, and if you like Jaws of the Lion, then maybe she might even be willing to do something like Gloomhaven, which is a massive game, obviously. But Jaws of the Lion is quite like, and it's good that publishers are doing stuff like that, that you're kind of able to dip your toe in, or help your fiance dip their toe in.
Maybe something like Mice and Mystics.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Which is also a dungeon crawler, but a lot more scaled back compared to anything like Gloomhaven. Yeah, I mean, like Matt said, obviously you've already invested quite a bit in this library that you have, and it might just be the case that maybe she just doesn't want to play those kind of games, and it's okay. Like, some people are just not into those style of games, and I think, obviously, like, Dicebreaker exists to try and, introduce people to board games and new types of tabletop gaming and everything like that. But, there's also a point where you might have to consider maybe just stick to the kind of games that she does like, and just, like, go width instead of depth. Like, just sort of move sideways. So, like, if she likes Pandemic, maybe find a co-op game like Pandemic. We have a whole list of co-op games on the site, which range with depth. So, it's not always the case that someone's going to want to invest that much time in board games. Like, I don't like watching a lot of television shows because they require you to invest a lot of time in them to really get into it. And that's just not something I really want to do. So therefore, when people are like, I can't believe you haven't watched this, I'm like, I just don't want to do that. And sometimes it's okay.
Yeah. I think, as well, kind of just building on the point I said earlier about like finding like spin-offs, basically. Also, a lot of the themes that reoccur in board games tend to reoccur in like a lot of different games. So, for instance, if your fiance is into, you know, I don't know, pandemic or like co-op stuff, like me and said, there are loads of co-op games. If they happen to like Lovecraft stuff, you know, instead of going straight into like Eldritch Horror or Mansions of Madness, you could try the
Elder Sign is a little bit more accessible, for example.
Or the Arkham Horror living card game, because that has a campaign structure, but the actual games are like 40 minutes, half an hour, depending on how you play them, rather than 2-3 hour chunks. So I think you, like me and said, you can kind of go sideways and go out of those series if it's a theme or a mechanic. It's one of the nice things about board games is there's just so many of them at some point where you can probably find, if you're looking for a game that takes approximately 1 hour, is co-op, has a certain theme, is a certain kind of difficulty or weight, there'll be a game out there somewhere.
There's even a Cthulhu version of Pandemic. Maybe give that a go. Reign of Cthulhu, I think.
Yeah, and there's the North America Hot Zone North America.
Hot Zone, yeah.
I think publishers are kind of cottoning on to the fact that people, like as board games get bigger and bigger, more and more people are coming into them, and those big long, like sessions or like lots of rules are often too much for most people to kind of pick up and enjoy. So they are kind of like Jaws of the Lion, like Hot Zone, like Ticket to Ride London and New York. There are those kind of short things, and they are those games in concept. You know, it's still, most of those games are still in there. They're just kind of chopped down to a more digestible size.
Indeed.
Let's read this one from Will. I say let's. It's me that's going to read it. Here I go. From Will, friend of the site, Will. Given Meehan's recent comments on Tailstone's review on the YouTube channel now, and also on the website, I've been thinking about just how unnecessarily big some games are. What game do you think would benefit most from being simplified down to a pocket-sized travel version instead of the gigantic Lux box it is now?
99% of board games, I would say.
Thank you, Will. That needs to be said.
I honestly get like red with anger when I open a board game box and it's like 50% like just air. I'm like,
Splendor.
why? What? Like, yeah, they just put like, oh mate, I can't even. When I recently opened a box, a game that was sent to me. I opened the box and it was 2 decks of cards and like something else, and then the rest was all just cardboard, and I was like, are you joking me? Like, what? I don't want a massive box that's gonna, like, you could have put this in a smaller box and I would have been way happier. Instead you've sold me like a bunch of air, and I'm not. I get real angry about stuff like this. Let me tell you, Will, let me tell you. I honestly I think probably at least 70 to 80% of board games should be smaller than they are.
It's when they have giant inlays in there for like not a lot of stuff. Like some games I understand, like Marvel Champions for example has that problem, but Marvel Champions is the kind of game where you buy more cards and you put them in the box, like you fill it in some of those gaps in the inlay, so it kind of made with that purpose in mind. Doesn't stop some of it from being a bit egregious. Whereas like other examples are just like, oh wow, you've like, this is 80% inlay and you've got some cards in here and maybe some dice or something. It does make me cross as well, Lolies. And I think...
Sorry, go on.
I think Matt and I have discussed part of the issue being that it is often the case, especially now, that larger game boxes tend to catch people's attention more than smaller ones. Because even though technically what you're getting inside isn't maybe that much different from a smaller box, they look at the larger box and they're like, oh, that's more impressive, it's got more value to it, yada yada yada, when actually like probably not the case.
Especially if they're selling a box that technically only has stuff in it. Like, let's just say they're selling like a big box for £15, and it is £15 worth of stuff because there's nothing inside. But you look, as a customer, you look at this big box and think £15 for this big box. Wow, that's great. And it's like, okay, well, obviously I'm going to buy the big box for £15 rather than the tiny box for £15. But
yeah,
there was something else I was going to say actually. But, oh yeah, what you were saying about when you get boxes like in, was it Marvel you were saying?
Marvel Champions, where it's like, oh yeah, but they expect you to like fill that. I that still annoys me though, because they shouldn't assume that I'm gonna buy expansions. Yeah, no, that's the problem. Yeah, but this is coming from a company like Fantasy Flight, where they make games designed to produce many expansions for you to put in there.
Yeah, I think Fantasy Flight is among the worst offenders because they always use the same terrible cardboard inlay that is a channel down the middle and then 2 kind of raised areas on the side, and they use it for almost every single game, and they don't include enough bags to separate pieces out. It just uses up more space than it needs to. Like, it's terrible. Every time I just chuck them out. Like, and they all, it's either that, well, it normally is that, and often it's combined with kind of just the same square, exactly the same width, exactly the same, which is fine if you're lining things up on the shelf, it fits perfectly, they all look very neat. But sometimes when you've got a game like Mansions of Madness, for instance, which has a load of miniatures in it, versus, I don't know, something else, that just doesn't have that stuff in there, and it, yeah, like you say, it's not helping anything, because it's worse for the environment because it's taking up more room when they're shipping it. It's worse for the people buying the games because it's taking up more room than it needs to, and board games take up a lot of room as it is.
It's harder to transport, so you want to go around someone's house. Oh, I'll bring this game. And you're like, oh, like when I'm walking back from the office to go home, I'm just lugging this giant thing with me.
Yeah, and it sucks at retailers as well, because they then have to kind of optimize the shelf space they have, which is part of it, because, like you say, it catches the eye if there's a bigger box. If there's 100 games on a shelf and one of them is bigger than 50 others, then you're more likely to be drawn to it. But
some of my favourite games are like this small, like tiny. Like
Love Letter comes in a bag.
Love Letter
Size
comes
of a
in a
deck
bag.
Of cards. So good.
You can chuck like 20 copies of Love Letter in your handbag, or like Fox in the Forest, or Coup, or like, obviously they're much shorter games anyway, so they're going to be smaller. But then even the bigger games that just utilise space really well, like Fort takes like 30 to 40 minutes to play, I think, depending on the player count, and that's like a really nice sized box, and I think it uses its space really well. If the box uses its space really well, yeah, look how sweet it is. I love how it looks, and I love the size of it. Whereas like Scythe, for example, is huge, but that thing is heavy because it is full of stuff. Because Scythe is an enormous game.
But that's the thing. If it's filled, then it's okay. It's just
when it's filled with stuff. So don't do it.
Yeah, I think later games, speaking of Fort, like Root is another one that strikes me as exactly the right amount of space. I think it's really tight in that box in the best way. Because the other problem is where they go the other way, and you open a game for the first time, there are a load of punch boards, you punch all the tokens out, and then you try and put everything back in, and it doesn't shut flat, and you're having to like work out the absolute optimal way of getting everything in.
Vast was like
never
that.
Sits. Yeah.
Vast the Mysterious Manor was like that.
Yeah.
Lolies.
Hate Vast.
Games that have more than, I don't know, let's say a dozen different pieces or half a dozen different pieces, just include some kind of guide as to how to pack it away in the way that fits neatly inside the box and doesn't damage anything. Also include just enough baggies to put everything in.
Actually, some boxes even do that when they've got little like symbols where pieces are supposed to go. Like, that's all it even needs.
Excellent.
But like Twilight Imperium 4 is one that there are just, I don't know, there's like 8 different holes, and it's not clear how it's not separated by faction, because that doesn't work. You can't separate each thing out into its own separate thing. So at some point you're like, well, do I combine these with these because I use them during the same kind of actions? Like, you're having to almost, and it just ends up being exhausting to try and then when you're trying to take things out during a game, unless you've got everything on the table. It's just rubbish. So yeah, but it's not a good trend. Bigger boxes. I mean, miniatures also an issue. If fewer games included miniatures, a lot of that issue would be solved. There are so many games that do not need miniatures.
Fast.
Yeah.
Miniatures are the best part of Fast, actually.
No, because when we were using them, especially the little spider ones, their legs would break off and be all tangled and not nice. So
yeah. All right, let's close it off with this quite quick question. We're a few. Oh gosh, I say we're a few. We're 2 months away from Christmas.
Actually,
please.
6 weeks, I think.
Really? Wait, 6 weeks?
Oh no, wait, you're right. 2 months.
But actually, Lolies, would you like to read this one from Cecile?
Cecily.
Cecily. Sorry, apologies if I completely mispronounced that.
What board games would you recommend as the overall ultimate Christmas gift, and why? Cecily.
Super Rhino Hero Battle.
That was wrong. Rhino Hero Super Battle.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Rhino
Hero Super Battle.
I think that's really hard to answer because I don't know who it's for.
Okay, let's go, because I was thinking about this. Let's go one each. Let's go one that's like less than a tenner, kind of like your Secret Santa.
Okay.
You know, give it to someone that maybe doesn't know board games, and one that's kind of your mid-range, someone that likes board games but maybe hasn't played more than Ticket to Ride, Catan, Pandemic.
Right.
I'm gonna say for Secret Santa stuff, I mean, we already mentioned it, but Love Letter is always a winner.
That was mine as well.
Yeah, it's really good. There are loads of different themes, and they're basically all the same game, so you can just give it to someone and pick whatever theme is closest to their interests. It's really good.
So we're saying under £10.
Oh, sure, around that level, under 15, under 20, whatever you...
I know this gets pooed on a lot, but I'll probably go with The Mind. I think The Mind is quite good, and I've played it with my brother and his partner, and they don't really play an awful lot of board games. They're not hugely into it, and they loved it. And then after we played it, his partner was like, I want to play it again now, please. So I think, and that game is usually around £10, like 15 max. And again, nice small box. And I think it's one that's really easy to learn and a real hit at the Christmas party.
All the kids love it.
Yeah, they love it.
There's a game called Twin It, which I don't know how available it is anymore, because they changed distributors like last year or something. But it's called Twin It. It's kind of like, it's by the maker of Jungle Speed. Jungle Speed also equally good suggestion actually. But there's a team element in Twin It that you can play that I absolutely adore. If you're unaware of Jungle Speed or Twin It, it's essentially like Snap on crack.
Whoa, Loli!
No, it's like Snap, but it's you've got all these like square cards, and they all have very similar symbols on them, and they're all double-sided as well. So even when you flip a card, it's got a different symbol on it. And you then need to put one hand on one, if you see like and you put them on the table, and eventually the table gets filled up with more and more cards that have similar colorings and similar patterns. And then, so eventually you're like looking at this table, like while your eyes are just like this. You can't, listeners won't be able to see, but my eyes are very wide. And you need to put like one hand on one and one hand on the other to try and get pairs, and you need to get a certain amount of pairs to win. But there's a team version, which I even prefer. And in that case, you play with the person opposite you as your teammate. And you can only use a hand each. So you're then like seeing pairs that come up and trying to communicate with your partner where the other half of that pair is. But because the symbols are so like random, the patterns and everything, you just come up with like weird names for the patterns, and it gets very loud and rowdy and very stressful. And it's really good fun.
Nice. Let's whiz through big ones. If you're going to give a bigger game, I think I'd probably just go like I feel like Azul, a lot of people have played by this point, but there's still enough people that haven't played Azul, and I do think it's like right up there with kind of like the modern classics at this point, like your Ticket to Ride, your Catans.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm gonna say, aside from Super Rhino Hero Battle, which is a masterpiece.
Rhino Hero Super Battle.
That's the one. Rhino Hero Super Battle, Super Rhino Hero Battle. I don't care. You know what I'm talking about. The one with the rhinos and the monkeys. That's a really great game. Or just normal Rhino Hero. Junkkart's pretty good.
Oh,
I'd say Junkart is a good pick because I just think at Christmas the kind of games you want to pick are the ones that they'll be able to play in a Christmassy kind of atmosphere, meaning
Drunk,
yes.
Junkart is so good because you actually get so many games in one game because you've got all the different rule sets. Love it.
Yeah. Junkart is such
Junkart, yes.
It's just such a good dexterity game, and it's a lot of fun. That or Team 3.
Oh, Team 3.
Green.
I love Team 3. You've just reminded me of these games I completely forgot about.
Mate, they're absolute party classics.
Yeah. I can't think of anything now that I think. I don't want to go with the one I always go for. I want to think of something else. So, what was your suggestion again, Matt?
Oh, I said Azul, which I feel like I always recommend. Yeah. But it is like, I don't know, it's become one of those, right? Also, there's multiple sequels now, so that sorts you for the next 3 years if they like it.
Rhino Hero Super
It's always something to consider as the lazy present option in the future.
Junkart and Team 3 were such good suggestions. I feel like I need to come up with something. No offense, Matt.
Yeah, no cheers.
Well,
obviously,
Alex wins the turf war.
Obviously, big fan of Quacks of Quedlinburg, but I also don't think that's necessarily the best game to play around Christmas because there's so many bits and stuff, right?
In fairness, this was more like games to give as Christmas gifts, not to play for Christmas.
But I think Liam is right though. I think games that you give at Christmas are often played around.
That's fair.
Christmas,
yeah. But a board game is for life, not just for Christmas.
Codenames. Codenames is a classic.
Yeah, Codenames is a good shout.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Meehan wins this round. Everyone listen to me and ignore the rest.
Not everything's a competition, Lolies.
Everyone listen to me.
I literally can't think
of
any games right now.
For once, listen to me.
I think Codenames is a good shout.
Also, no. Never mind.
All right. I think that's all we've got time for this week. But before we leave you, Lolies, as the designated representative of the video side of Dicebreaker this week, what's coming up on that youtube.com/Dicebreaker?
I always forget to get this ready, but actually, I have it open already. By the time this podcast goes out, ladies and gentlemen, you will have seen potentially, or if not, it will be coming soon, a sponsored video where we play the Shining title escape room game.
Escape
in a
from
box.
Outlook Hotel?
Yeah, something like that. Which would have been the video team played that. We will have done a painting stream where we paint some Darkest Dungeon minis. We will have done or will be doing an Among Us stream today with Outside Xbox and Eurogamer, where we will be playing some hide and seek as well.
I always enjoy watching those, so I'd recommend watching it. It's a good laugh.
I think it might already be on when the podcast comes out, actually. So
probably, yeah.
Quick!
Quick, stop listening to us.
Now.
Well, by the time they get to this part, it'll be over for sure, because they'll be over an hour in. But the Dungeonbreaker returns tomorrow, as we already mentioned. How exciting is that?
Premiere.
Usually at 3 p.m.
Bad attempts to stop giggling at very crude jokes.
Don't approve of that.
We may have a list about some Halloween games you should check out for Halloween. Spoopy times. Next week there'll be a How to Play on Betrayal, which will be written by Meehan and filmed by myself, me.
It's a team effort.
It's a team Alex effort.
Two Alexes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And live stream gameplays, and that's it. That's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that is a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, over on Dicebreaker.com, you can find already up is a review of Escape the Dark Sector from Alex Meehan, which has been discussed on this podcast a few times, which sounds pretty good. It's a very good review. I enjoyed both editing and reading it. We have a piece up talking about Star Wars X-Wing, and kind of looking at the space combat in it and kind of comparing it to Star Wars Squadrons. I'm laughing because Alex Meehan is sneezing or kind of just imploding. I'm
alright.
Next week, we will have a guide on painting miniatures up on the website. We'll also have a list of the best kind of Halloween-themed Magic the Gathering cards. And to round out the Halloween kind of celebration, there's also a piece where one of our writers, Jamie Taylor, played Mysterium with a professor in parapsychology, kind of chatting about its links to, how it represents spiritualism and ghost hunting and all of that stuff, which is really interesting.
Spooks.
It's kind of how it plays off of...
Meehan's
how
input
it plays
this
off
whole
of
week
human
is
psychology.
just shouting spooks every now and then.
This is what I do in October. I just shout spooks every so often.
So we have plenty coming up in the next couple of weeks. But until next week, that's it for the Dicebreaker podcast. Of course, you can find us until next time on Dicebreaker.com, youtube.com/Dicebreaker, or buy some Dicebreaker merchandise on dicebreaker.myshopify.com.
Wow!
As rocked by Lolies this week. Also as drunk by Lolies this week. That doesn't make any sense if you're listening to the audio version. But until next time, thank you, Alex Lolies.
Thank you for having me, Matt Jarvis.
Thank you, Alex Meehan.
Spooks!
I've been Matt Jarvis. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again, have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye.